Y'all ready for this? Cause it's the Animation Podcast now. Animation Podcast now. Animation Podcast now. It's time for the Animation Podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to the Animation Podcast. As if you didn't hear me singing it before. A weekly podcast about all things animation brought to you by FilmBook. My name is Byrd, but some of you may know me as AniMat from my YouTube channel, Electric Dragon 505, home of web series that are all about animation, including Animation Look Back and Animat's Reviews. Now, if this is your first time here in the Animation Podcast, well, strap yourselves in because we got a whole bunch of crazy stories for you here today. Even some of the biggest ones that we got this year so far. So get ready for a whole series of craziness where I will be talking about the Deadpool animated series and how it's actually not going to happen. But then we're going to go and lighten up the mood where we will be talking about the possibility that Tintin 2 could actually be a thing. Then afterwards, we will be talking about the animated short that will be appearing before The Incredibles 2. Then after that, we will be talking about Gravity Falls and something in which I never thought it would happen, but final freakingly, it looks like it will happen. And then finally, we will end things off with a really heavy Animat's Pick of the Week. Now, if you want to check out more episodes of the Animation Podcast, then all you have to do is go to FilmBook, which is film-book.com, by searching the Animation Podcast. You can also email us at podcast@filmbook.com with the Animation Podcast in the subject line. Okay, so for our first story that we have right over here, we're going to be discussing about something in which it sounded a little too good to be true. Now, this had a lot of anticipation going on because this is the ultimate partnership between FX, Marvel, and the Glover brothers, specifically with Stephen Glover and Donald Glover, both of which were set to be executive producers, writers, and showrunners of this series, this animated series even. And it was all supposed to be about Deadpool, and not necessarily connected with the movie starring Ryan Reynolds, but more its own thing, pretty much its own entity coming onto FX with a Deadpool animated series. Now, this had a lot of hype, this had a lot of people excited because you got some really prominent people working on a beloved character like Deadpool. But sadly, like I said before, some things sound way too good to be true and it ain't happening. Apparently what just happened is that the Glover brothers have decided to split with FX and Marvel. And apparently FX brought out a statement that says, due to creative differences, FX, Donald Glover, Stephen Glover, and Marvel Television have agreed to part ways on Marvel's Deadpool animated series. FX will no longer be involved with the project. FX and Marvel have an ongoing relationship through our partnership on Legion, which will continue. So the big thing that's going on in here is that the Deadpool animated series is pretty much canceled, but FX is still going to be working with Marvel in order to create Legion. And for a moment, that was the only thing that we have heard about it. Until a few days later on Twitter, where Donald Glover decided to express what even happened with the Deadpool animated series, where he posted a whole bunch of tweets that showed a script, or basically a mock script, of what would have been the finale of this Deadpool animated series. Now, nowadays, the tweets have pretty much all been deleted, but as you guys may know, tweets and whatever you post on the internet, I guess as a meme said it best, one does not simply delete something on the internet, because once you put it there, it's gonna be there forever. And thankfully, I do have a memory of what happened in that script. I actually did take the time to go and read what was the thing. And basically, what Donald Glover did is that he posted an entire script that's just 15 pages long. And it was a story about Deadpool suddenly finding himself in Africa, where his main mission was to go and save the last male northern white rhino in the world, who was Sudan. And this is actually a real rhino who sadly passed away last week. And the whole mission is just, yeah, he's got to go save him. And apparently he was paid by Bitcoins. And that was the big running gag in there, where Deadpool was paid in Bitcoins, but then he saw, in terms of the stocks of Bitcoins, like, it could be like, it would either make him super rich or it's practically worthless. I think Deadpool actually said it best in the script that he would go from being Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean to Johnny Depp from Pirates of the Caribbean, The Ride. And from there, of course, being Deadpool, he would go and mention a lot of pop culture references and even talk about how is it that his show never came to be. And he would go into several different factors. One of them would be regarding race, if it's not appealing for white people, considering that it does have a prominent black crew and a prominent African-American crew working on Deadpool, not just with the Glover brothers, but with other people in terms of the writing team and all that kind of stuff. And also, it could be for marketing purposes, because in a way, Marvel would just want to try to sell toys with Deadpool, and maybe making it a little too adult won't really work out that way, that they can't really market Deadpool in the veins of how they would market the Avengers and all that kind of stuff. However, what's actually very interesting to note, one of the articles that I have here, this one being in the Hollywood Reporter, they mention how there is a possibility that this whole Deadpool animated series might not really be dead. It actually states here, it's unclear if Marvel Television will shop the series elsewhere or if it could wind up on Disney's planned direct-to-consumer subscription service. So the big thing right over here is that it was supposed to be its own thing. It was ready to be like this major Deadpool animated series and have really prominent people, like the people that brought you Atlanta. Yes, I know my phone is ringing. Don't mind that. I'm sure it's gonna stop at one point. But anyways, yeah, I guess you could consider an outtake now put into this. Fudge nabbit. Would you shut up, phone? I'm in the middle of a podcast here. Okay, thank you. Alright, as I was saying, this Deadpool series, it had some very prominent people. Like, you have the Glover brothers, the same people that brought you Atlanta, another really popular series. And, you know, all the hype was pretty much all set for this, but sadly this never really did happen, and for now we only got a bit of hints from Donald Glover himself of what would happen to the Deadpool series and why it never really came to be. So overall, that's kind of the position that we are in right now, is that this Deadpool series is gone, and some articles are stating that there could be a chance that it's not completely dead. Maybe if it does get repicked up, it might not get, it might not be with the Glover brothers again, but maybe the idea of a Deadpool animated series might not be fully dead. And I mean, in terms of that, I'm sure that would be possible, but not in the form that we've had right over here. Not in the form of like a more adult-oriented animated series that would have Donald and Stephen Glover working on the project. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. And I mean, this is not the first time that stuff like this would actually happen, where you would have some very prominent people in the entertainment business working on this animated project that is related to an iconic character, and it sounds like a great idea and everybody's hyped up for it, and sadly it would just never happen. I'm sure these things happen all the time. There are some prominent examples out there, and I'm sure there are plenty more that hasn't gone to the public just yet. But this one right over here, yeah, it does suck, because it sounds, like, it really does sound like a great idea. It's, this does have a lot of potential, and especially with the popularity of Deadpool really surging back up ever since 2016 with that movie, honestly, the popularity of Deadpool really did go to the mainstream, and seeing other people trying out Deadpool outside of Ryan Reynolds, it would be great to see, outside of the comics and outside of that. And I know there are plenty of other examples. I think Deadpool did actually appear in Ultimate Spider-Man, I believe. But, having a Deadpool animated series, I could see the strong possibilities that could actually go in there. But nowadays, though, it's hard to really see it as something that could be more kid-friendly, because with Deadpool nowadays, he's known to be a character that just doesn't hold back. Like, he needs that adult-oriented freedom to make all the crazy references that he wants. Like, a great example, in the Donald Glover script that he posted on Twitter, like, he would go and make a lot of major references. Like, it's not just with Bitcoin or Johnny Depp and all that kind of stuff. He would also, you would find another jab at Donald Trump in this. There was also, like, some kind of accusation that somebody actually bit Beyonce's face at some point. I don't know what happened there. There's also the controversy regarding Facebook and how everybody hates it ever since the whole Cambridge Academia scandal, or I think, is it Cambridge Academia or something you guys probably know what I'm talking about. If I said it wrong, you'll probably correct me anyways, but that's kind of the big thing, is that it's hard to really imagine Deadpool being executed in a way that would be a little less than PG-13. Like, that's probably the minimum that Deadpool would have to go, is just be PG-13. Otherwise, then you would have to make something that's just geared towards kids, and that's probably going to be weird to see. You're pretty much going to be going back to how it was back in the 80s, where you have to make animated shows for kids based on movies that were rated R. And yeah, there were a lot of those back then. Like, I remember I saw an episode of a RoboCop animated series that was geared towards kids. Yeah, it was a very strange time, let's say. But overall, yeah, it really is disappointing, and maybe we won't truly know the answer as to why Donald Glover's Deadpool animated series never came to be. We got some ideas, but yeah, I guess we won't really have it, sadly. And as for the idea that maybe there could be a chance we'll be seeing it in another platform, like maybe they'll just go and put it on another channel, or maybe even in Disney's the streaming service. Honestly, that's hard to tell. It's hard to really imagine at this point, because people are really fixated to this Deadpool, and if you're not, like, one of the big reasons why this Deadpool animated series is hyped up is because of the attachment with Donald Glover and Stephen Glover. And without that, well, then you just have your typical Deadpool animated series. There's nothing really special that would make it stand out. So, I don't know, maybe, like, they would try, but I highly doubt that it would get as much hype as we got right over here. Now, the possibility of seeing a Deadpool animated series in the future, yeah, we could be seeing that at some point, but certainly not this Deadpool. So yeah, that's kind of the big story that we have. Sadly, we're not getting the Deadpool animated series, and it is rather sad, per se. Okay, so moving on to our next story, we're going to be talking about Steven Spielberg. And right now, he really is a big name, and really going mainstream once again, considering that this week it was the big release of his next big movie, Ready Player One, in which many people are saying that, surprisingly, it's actually quite enjoyable. Maybe not a fantastic film, and maybe it's not going to be up there among Spielberg's best, but it definitely is an enjoyable film to watch. And in the past, Steven Spielberg, of course, has done many great, enjoyable films. And of course, a lot of people would point out some of the works that he has done throughout the 70s and the 80s. But even recently, there have been a lot of great ones as well. But the last time that we have really seen Steven Spielberg make a great film that's more action-oriented and that's a lot of fun to watch would actually be back in 2011 when he released the animated feature, The Adventures of Tintin, which, in my opinion, has to be one of the most underrated animated features out there. I absolutely love the film. It is extremely well made, and it's probably one of the best arguments out there of how motion capture can actually be used as an animation medium. I know that motion capture can really get a lot of crap, especially with the Image Movers digital movies like Polar Express and Mars Needs Moms, but this is one of those examples of when the technology would be used right for an animated feature, and it was done beautifully. And not only that, but also extremely well written and really does stay true to the spirit of the Hergé comics. However, there is one thing that people have been excited for a long time, and we've never gotten a chance to really get it, which is a sequel to The Adventures of Tintin, because at the end of the film, without really saying much, it does end off on a massive cliffhanger, and many fans of the movie have been anticipated for the continuing adventures of seeing Tintin and Captain Haddock going off trying to find like big treasures and stuff like that, but sadly, it just never really happened. So in this case right over here, we would expect that maybe it ended off like the Deadpool animated series, like the Tintin series just got canceled, and the people who are working on it, like Steven Spielberg, well, they never really bothered to go and actually do it. But then, when Steven Spielberg was talking with Premiere, apparently he actually gave us a recent update on what's going on with the Tintin sequel. And apparently, it is still in the back of his mind. Steven Spielberg actually stated, reading my quote here from Slash Film, it stated that Peter Jackson has to do the second part. Normally, if all goes well, he will soon start working on the script. As it takes 2 years of animation work on the film for you, I would not expect it to see it for about 3 years, but Peter will stick to it. Tintin is not dead. And that's actually another big thing about Tintin, is that it actually is the collaboration between two of the biggest giants in Hollywood, Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson. Now, in the first film, Steven Spielberg was the director and Peter Jackson was the executive producer. But for the sequel, they're switching roles, where Steven Spielberg is now the executive producer and Peter Jackson is going to be the director. But since then, we saw Peter Jackson doing a lot of different projects, like he was more focused on doing the Hobbit movies, and he was working on some other projects as well, so we don't know what's going on with him. And as for Steven Spielberg, he was doing his own movies as well. Like, some of them are more serious and more Oscar bait, and of course there's a lot of others that are big name movies, like they're pretty much big budget films that he would be an executive producer or that he would actually be a director, like Bridge of Spies or The Post, or just recently with Ready Player One. But it seems that what Steven Spielberg is saying here is that both these people, Spielberg and Jackson, they're still highly dedicated to go and create a Tintin 2. And honestly, this news makes me excited. Along with probably the next two, this is the one that this week got me the most excited to see right over here. Now, of course, Steven Spielberg did also mention that if, like, worst case, or best case scenario, I mean, we're not going to see a Tintin 2 until, like, 3 years later, or maybe even 4 years later. But still, what makes me excited is the fact that there is still going to be a Tintin 2, that we are still going to get another Adventures of Tintin movie. And honestly, I really am that, like, oh my god, it just makes me really excited, the fact that at least we're gonna happen. I'll be patient for them to actually go and make it, but getting more of that is definitely great. Now, some people have stated before that the possibility as to why we didn't really get a Tintin 2 as soon as possible is because in America, it really didn't do all that much. Like, people didn't really care. But then again, considering that we are talking about Tintin, it really is a series in which that it is quite popular all around the world except in America. It really is the case with most other Belgian comic books, with the exception of the Smurfs, of course. Like, it's the same thing with Asterix. Everybody knows about Asterix except for the Americans, for some reason. But, like, here in Montreal, for example, like, everybody here knows about who Asterix is or who Tintin is. So, the fact that we are gonna get a sequel, it really is exciting, and honestly, I don't care how long it'll take. They could go and take all the time that they want, but as long as we actually are gonna get it in general, that's a great sign right over there. And with them still involved with it, yeah, we are still gonna get another great adventure that's gonna be very well done. So, at the most, I can imagine that if Peter Jackson suddenly decides, like right now, as you're listening to this, to go and start working on Tintin 2, yes, there is a possibility that we're not going to get it until like 2021 or 2022, like when the first movie is going to be 10 years old. But still, if we're getting more of these, then I'm all forward. I'll completely support. I'll completely support it. I'll just put it on my list as some of my most anticipated animated films that will be out coming soon. Speaking of anticipated animated features, let us discuss about The Incredibles 2, which is not only the most anticipated animated feature of the year, but the most anticipated superhero film after Avengers Infinity War. I know technically some people might ask, well, what about Deadpool 2? Yes, a lot of people are excited for Deadpool 2, but I can guarantee you they're not as excited for Deadpool 2 as much as they are for The Incredibles 2. However, what we will be discussing here is not going to be specifically about The Incredibles 2, but the thing that will be appearing before The Incredibles 2. Yes, apparently at the Tribeca Film Festival, they have revealed what is going to be the animated short that will be premiering just before The Incredibles 2, which in this case is going to be called Bao. And the story of it will go, by the way, I'm going to be reading my source here through the Pixar Post, as it states, an empty nesting Chinese mom gets another chance at motherhood when one of her dumplings springs to life. But she must come in terms with the bittersweet revelation that nothing stays cute and small forever. And it also added that the story will be set in the ups and downs of the parent-child relationship through the colorful, rich, and tasty lens of the Chinese immigrant community in Canada. Now, what's actually very interesting to note about this animated short, Bao, is that this is actually going to be breaking a few records. Not only will this be the longest Pixar animated short, clocking in at 8 minutes. Yeah, don't worry. When I say the longest, it's not going to be like Olaf's Frozen Adventure or anything like that. But also, when it comes to Bao, this is also going to be the first time that a Pixar animated short that's going to, the first time that it's going to be directed by a woman, which in this case is Domi Shi. And what's very interesting to note about Domi Shi is that with this animated short right over here, part of it is going to be a little bit autobiographical, considering that she was actually born in China, but when she was 2 years old, she had to move to Toronto with her parents. So in a way, we do see a little bit of her onto Bao, considering that it will go into the perspective of a Chinese immigrant in Canada. And what's actually very interesting right over here is that you could tell that there are simultaneously a lot of differences, but similarities to The Incredibles 2. Because when I first read about this, and when I first looked into what the story would be about, you could tell that this one is going to be a lot more emotional. Like, this is going to be the kind of story that there's a good chance people might have to bring their tissues to the movies just in case this thing gets a little too sad or something like that. Like, you could tell that this is going to be between the relationship between the mother and probably the dumpling, per se. I don't know if it's a metaphorical dumpling or a literal dumpling. You never know with animation. But the funny thing is that the big similarity between this and The Incredibles 2 is that you could tell that this is going to have a big theme of family. That the relationship between the mom and the dumpling is going to be more of like kind of a mother-son or mother-daughter kind of thing. And the Chinese mother will be watching the dumpling grow up. And in The Incredibles 2, while that might not be the specific theme, it will still have the element of family, because in the first Incredibles, like, not only is it a superhero film, but it's also a movie about family. And the same thing is going to happen in The Incredibles 2, but this time we're going to see fatherhood. That's going to be a big thing, considering that the roles are going to be switched, where now Helen is going to be the one that's going into the grand adventures, while Bob, on the other hand, is going to be the stay-at-home dad. And this right over here is going to be more in the perspective of the mother. So I guess you're going to get your complete fill of the importance of family, like not only with The Incredibles 2, but also with Bao. Now, this is going to be quite interesting to see how this is going to be executed, and maybe, like, with the theme of family, it will work out as a way to prepare ourselves with what's going to be in The Incredibles 2. At least, if, in case there are many people out there that are not big fans with less superhero and more family, then at least with this, it will prepare them for the family elements that will come with The Incredibles 2. And by the way, one thing I forgot to mention is actually regarding some of the backgrounds of Domi Shi. Like, I already mentioned of how she was a Chinese immigrant in Canada. Well, at least during her early years, of course. But in terms of what she has done in Pixar, she actually began pretty recently, where she was hired as an intern to be a story artist in Inside Out. Oh, no. Actually, she started as an intern and then was a story artist in Inside Out. And then from there, she would work on some big Pixar films, and some of them have yet to be released, including The Good Dinosaur, of course, The Incredibles 2, and Toy Story 4. So she has done some jobs working onto those. But it wasn't until when she would pitch several ideas to Pixar of what to do for an animated short, and they decided, hey, you know what, Bao actually does look great. So they greenlit that one, and now she's going to be the writer and director of it. But right now, from what I'm seeing, is that that's the big thing that a lot of people are praising, and what they're really excited the most about Bao. It's not necessarily the story itself, but the fact that we are going to get a female director at Pixar. I mean, the closest thing they've ever gotten to it was Brave with Brenda Chapman, but then you got that entire controversy right over there. So at least this is a good big step. A good big step for progressiveness at Pixar. The fact that they are going to get a female director in there, and who knows, maybe they will be open to have a female director to work on a Pixar movie and let her stay there. So, you know, this is honestly pretty exciting, and I think this is really going to be an animated short that people should keep an eye out for, to see if this is going to be something that's going to be big within itself, not just in terms of The Incredibles 2, but also Bao could be getting its own major fan base as well. So that's pretty much the big thing with that. And if you guys are excited to go and check out Bao, well, it's going to actually make its premiere on its own at the Tribeca Film Festival, in which it will start out on April 21st. But if you cannot attend to that film festival, then all you have to do is just wait until The Incredibles 2 gets released, when that movie will be coming out on June 13th. Okay, so moving on to our next story right over here, let us discuss about DVDs and Blu-rays, and particularly with Disney. Now, of course, Disney has given us some amazing Blu-rays and DVDs with many of their feature films, especially with their animated films from Disney Animation and also from Pixar. But when it comes to their animated series, or when it comes to their TV shows in general, man, well, there's nothing really much to say about it because there's nothing that they've done with it. It's like throughout the 2000s, they were on a roll, but then once we hit the 2010s, they didn't do much. Like, maybe with the exception of some ABC series like Lost and Once Upon a Time and stuff like that. But other than that, they just didn't care about releasing DVDs and Blu-rays based on their animated series. However, even though Disney is not going to do it, well then maybe Shout Factory will, with one of their most acclaimed animated series that they have ever done. Now, on social media, Alex Hirsch has made the announcement that he has collaborated with Shout Factory in order to release Gravity Falls on Blu-ray and DVD. Now, if I may read through my source here, on the Animation magazine, it stated that Gravity Falls, the complete series, will be offered in both standard retail edition with 6 discs and the collector's edition. A 7-disc box set including an entire disc of bonus features with brand new content created especially for this box set. Bonus features will be announced in the coming months. And apparently, if you can go and pre-order it at Shout Factory, you would actually get a free rolled lithograph, while supplies last, of course. So that's all the information that we know so far, is that we are going to get a complete series of Gravity Falls coming to DVD and Blu-ray, and you can either get it in the regular version, or you can actually go and get the collector's edition. Now, I don't know if this collector's edition is only exclusive to the Shout Factory website, or if you can also get it in stores as well, but it is actually interesting to note. And yeah, even Alex Hirsch himself said that this whole thing is pretty much a miracle in general, because like I said, Disney just doesn't care about Blu-rays and DVDs when it comes to making, pretty much making them for their animated TV shows, which honestly, it's kind of a weird thing, to be honest, because there are tons of profitable opportunities when it comes to DVDs and Blu-rays. Like, yeah, I know that technically you could say, well, there's the whole streaming service thing and the whole digital aspect that people can go and get, which does turn them off from actually doing these things, but Disney honestly is seriously doubting the potential that they could have with this, because honestly, looking back at many of the TV shows that they have, like DuckTales, Gummy Bears, Darkwing Duck, Rescue Rangers, what else? Tailspin. Considering that nowadays, you could tell that Disney is really trying to profit off of the nostalgia of that nowadays. I don't see why they didn't decide yet to go and release a DVD and Blu-ray to put it in retail stores. Like, they could actually make a good buck with that. I mean, technically, yeah, sure, you could argue that maybe they have done so, but that's just like years ago, and especially the fact that we haven't seen a Blu-ray release of any of those animated series. But at the very least, that I'm glad that we are seeing someone like Alex Hirsch taking the initiative to at least do something that they could actually put it onto DVD and Blu-ray, to actually go to Shout Factory and actually have this happen. And you never know, like, what this could do. I think this is really going to be something that Disney should seriously keep an eye out for, and it could possibly be an experiment where Disney could test out to see if there is some profitability and if there actually is a market to make DVDs and Blu-rays for their animated series, and for some of their recent animated series. It doesn't have to be the old ones, but also when it comes to their new ones. Maybe this could encourage them to go and do more of that they could actually go and release some DVDs and Blu-rays of many of their other series. And honestly, one example that I want to bring out to show that Disney really doesn't care about releasing DVDs and Blu-rays about their TV shows, And this is an example that I would frequently bring up, to be honest, a lot of times even. It would actually be regarding The Muppet Show, because the thing is with that is that they would already release season 1, and then they were on a good roll with season 2 and season 3, and they have done announcements before that they would actually go and release season 4, where previously you got Kermit, Miss Piggy, Fozzie in the background, in the covers. Gonzo would be the one in season 4, but sadly, that somehow never happened, and to this day, we have yet to actually receive either a season 4 or a season 5 of The Muppet Show, either on DVD or Blu-ray. And the weirdest thing about it is that whenever Disney would actually make a YouTube video related to the Muppets, not necessarily on the Muppet YouTube channel, but like on something like Oh My Disney, the weirdest thing is that they would actually still advertise to this day that you can actually go and buy season 1, 2, and 3 on DVD. Which is honestly really weird, that you could tell that these things, like, Disney knows that they exist, but they're not doing anything about it to add anything new. So I think this really is the big thing with Gravity Falls, is that Disney could keep an eye on it to see if maybe it can bring back their interest into bringing their TV shows onto DVD and Blu-ray, and go ahead to go and make more of that. So maybe this is the major stepping stone into it, and maybe to go and create some different versions of it. They don't have to stick with just one, because keep in mind, with Gravity Falls, there are 2 versions that you actually can go and buy. And I don't mean just DVD and Blu-ray, but you can get a regular edition, and then you can get the collector's edition, which I think this is going to be something that Gravity Falls fans are really keeping an eye on, and they really want to go and get. And for someone like me who recently saw Gravity Falls, and I gotta say, it definitely is one of the best animated series of the decade, I personally am really excited, and I have my eyes set on the Blu-ray, on the collector's edition Blu-ray. Now, I'm not going to pre-order it just yet, because there could be a chance that maybe FilmBook might send me one to do a review for it, which honestly, that would be really awesome. FilmBook, if you're listening to this, I want Gravity Falls Collector's Edition on Blu-ray! No, but yeah, honestly, like, I really am excited to see what this has in store, and on top of that, what the bonus content would have in store, because I'm sure there are tons of things that they could do, and I know there's a lot of bonus content that they have already done for Gravity Falls, in the form of like TV specials and all that kind of stuff, and even like some different shorts, like you saw, like I know that they have done a few for like Dipper's Mystery Adventures, or like some pro tips from Mabel. Like those are not the titles, but like that's kind of the theme of those things. But yeah, honestly, I'm really excited to see what these have in store, and I can't wait to know what the bonus features are, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the complete series. Now, you can actually go and, like I said before, you could pre-order it through shoutfactory.com right now, where the DVD is $50 and the Blu-ray is $80. And on top of that, if you pre-order right now, then you can actually get a free roll lithograph. But if you guys are curious to know when these are going to be coming out in stores, then all you have to do is just wait until July 24th for the release of Gravity Falls on DVD and Blu-ray. And so finally, we are now going to go and end things off with AniMat's Pick of the Week. And before I continue on to this story, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a warning, because this is going to contain some seriously dark subject matter. Like, maybe more darker than any other story that I have covered here in the animation podcast. What I'm about to talk about here will contain some subjects that includes sexual harassment, a lot of abuse, and also some sexual contact, both consensual and non-consensual, with minors. So if you're the kind that cannot stand hearing these things, then I suggest you run away right now. This is definitely not for you, and like I said before, this thing is gonna get heavy. However, if you are brave enough to continue listening on to this, then get ready, because things are about to get really wild, and not in a good way. And who I'm going to be talking about is going to be another sexual predator within the animation industry. However, this one is a lot more infamous about it. This is not the first time that this story has been covered before, but this is the first time that this story has been covered this way, going deep into these details. And honestly, in terms of many of the other sexual predator stories that I've heard, I don't know if there's anything that can really top this one, because this is at the level where this is seriously messed up. And honestly, this is the kind of stories that really, you're going to look at what I'm about to say, or you're going to hear what I'm about to say, and this is going to make John Lasseter's hugs look comfortable. And the best way to describe it is think about the accusations done to Loud House creators Chris Savino, and really crank that up to 11, where you can get a little bit more insane than that. And who I am talking about, of course, is John Krisfaluci, also known as John K. Now, before I get into the actual story, for those of you who don't know who John K is, John K has been known in the animation industry to create the Ren and Stimpy show. And he is also very well known for his beyond over-the-top art style, which actually makes him one of the most influential animators in the modern era. And from there, not only will you find many different artists and animators who would cite John K as a major influence, but you will find that some of the biggest animated series nowadays are actually heavily inspired by his works and Ren and Stimpy. And these would include Adventure Time, Rick and Morty, SpongeBob SquarePants, and many, many more. However, the one thing about John K that people may not know about is how he is behind the scenes. And my God, there's a major story, so let's go ahead and get right down to it. Buzzfeed has recently released an article telling the story of Robyn Byrd and Katie Rice, whom both of which have a special relationship with John K when they were teenagers, and when John K was in his late 30s and early 40s. And when I mean relationship, it can legitimately go into that kind of relationship. Now, I'll do my best to describe the article, but I do highly encourage that you guys should actually read this article for yourself. It's a very tough read, but it's a very necessary read as well. So basically the whole summary of this, or my best summary that I can do, is that Robyn Byrd and Katie Rice, they have known John K personally throughout their teen years. And the interesting thing to mention about each of them is that Robyn Byrd and Katie Rice, they've always aspired to work in the animation industry, and they were huge fans of Ren and Stimpy, and they personally contacted John K about their love for Ren and Stimpy and that they love his work and stuff like that. And John K, he promised them to get into the animation industry, like when they're 18, that they'll put them in their first steps to go and actually work for him and to really get into the animation world. And on top of that, like while they're at it, he can help them grow as artists to really make their craft a whole lot better. But throughout that entire process, there are some things that John K would start to get a little bit more personal with them and really start to get into the creepy factor, when John K would actually be a lot more sexually attracted to them. In fact, with Robyn Byrd, she would actually be in a relationship with John K starting at the age of 15. And it would actually go pretty far, to the point that, yes, they would actually have sex. And, like, apparently she started having sex with John K when she was 16, but it's more John K. wanting sex with Robyn more so than Robyn wanting sex with John K. in this case. And from there, they would tell their stories about how it is being in a relationship with John K., like how it is as either just friends or as an actual couple. And they would tell them about some of his more abusive and some of his more harassing nature. How he really is sexually preying on them, even as just minor teenagers. And even at one point, Robyn actually did state, or actually there was another animator that once worked with John K., that he would go and talk to him, and John K. would show a whole series of pictures of Robyn Byrd, and some of them are more explicit. I think that's the best way to put it, that a lot more sexual and a lot more explicit. And like John K. would show that he is very proud of that. And even with Katie, ever since she started working for John K., like you could tell he's a lot more abusive. He would constantly sexually harass the women that's all around him, especially with Robyn and Katie. And both of which, coincidentally enough, they would both completely break any sort of relationship with John K. in the early 2000s, where I believe it is Robyn Byrd who decided to completely leave the animation industry and would go to be a philosophy teacher, while Katie, she's still in the animation industry. She's still working in animation with the help of John K. But, well, what I mean is that she's not working for John K. now, but because of John K., she is actually living her dream as a teenager working within the animation industry. So they would really go deep into their relationship, how it is working with John K., and how he is in his personal life, and some of the more disturbing elements, like how, like, mostly looking into his dark sexual fantasies. And even at one point, I think it's with Katie, where she was working on the Weird Al music video of Close But No Cigar, but then she would go onto John K.'s computer and she would actually find some child pornography, which absolutely shocked her. I think Robyn also knew about his child pornography as well. But yeah, they tried reporting to they tried reporting to the police, but so far nothing has really happened so far. Now, interestingly enough, in this article right over here, they also mention about his perspective as well from John K., but not necessarily from John K. himself. It was an attorney that spoke for John K., how he was very well aware that in the past he had a serious mental illness and that today he is doing his best to make himself a little bit more better. So he is trying to improve on his totally sick nature from the past. At least that's what the attorney is trying to say. But long story short, the article revealed the story about Katie Price and Robyn Byrd and how they legit had a relationship with John K., or kind of a relationship or a legitimate relationship or any of that kind of stuff, and really go into his dark side, his sexual side, his harassing side, basically his whole dark side in general. And honestly, when I read this article, yeah, it really is heavy, but personally, my only thought when reading this was just that the only thing that I was surprised about is the fact that this thing didn't happen anytime sooner. Because honestly, the thing is, John K. is actually pretty well known for this, even before this Buzzfeed article came out. In fact, not many people were really surprised about this. Most of what the article is saying is nothing really new, because people are very well aware about John K's abusive nature and his little creepy side that he might have a thing for minor girls. And the funny thing is that while there are many people out there who are huge fans of John K's works, you're not going to find many people who are fans of working with John K, considering that he does have a history of being very abusive to his employees. And when it comes to women, well, yeah, you got the big portfolio right over here of John K being abusive to his employees. Now, let's take a look at the bigger folder that we have here that has the entire history of him harassing women that worked for him or just in frickin' general. And even in terms of the thing with his turn on with minors and stuff like that, that is kind of well known as well. In fact, there is actually something right over here in the article that did actually mention that I believe there was a book or something like that that said something about Ren and Stimpy, or I think it's a book, or it's either like a book or a video. Okay, yeah, no, I found I found it right over here. It says, although sexual abuse allegations against Krisfaluci have never been made public before, his relationship with Byrd has been an open secret within animation. So open that a girl he has been dating since she was 15 years old was referred briefly in a book about the history of Ren and Stimpy. So people are very well aware of that. And even when it comes to John K himself, he doesn't really make it that much of a secret, where he is actually quite turned on to girls that are under the age of 18. In fact, there was actually a little radio show with Howard Stern. Well, okay, Howard Stern doesn't have a little radio show, but he was in an interview with Howard Stern during the mid-90s, and they were talking about one of the characters that he created called Sody Pop. And the way that Howard Stern described her is like, yeah, you know, she's a hot chick, she's got big cans, she's got nice legs, you know, she's a pretty hot babe. And John K tried to add in to her sexiness, like he was just leaning on the mic, just pretty much saying, and she's underage too. And like then afterwards, he would just nod like, yeah, you know, that's another thing that makes her sexy. And you know, I'm just there thinking, what? No! Dude! Really? That's what you add to the factor of her sexiness? Because that's the crazy thing with Sody Pop. Like, if you go on to Google Images and you look for the different pictures of the character that he actually drew himself, there's a lot of lewd and erotic pictures that include Sody Pop, where you actually do see her boobs, like nipples and all. And if your intentions are to make like a 15 or 16-year-old girl with her, I don't think that should be something on the internet or something you should do or something that you should be public about. I mean, seriously, like, you know, I don't have anything against you if you're more open to what makes you turned on either a guy or a girl, you know? Like, even with me, like, I don't mind that people know that, you know, I do have a little thing with girls, or even, top-heavy women, per se. But the thing is with this is that if you're gonna be open to something that is not only considered, like, looked down upon in society, but especially something that is illegal, like, being attracted to girls that you shouldn't think sexually about, like that they would be like 14, 15, or 16, that's, honestly, it's just wrong. But going back into the subject right over here, going into like what this Buzzfeed article is about, the only thing that it really is new that they added into this whole story with John K, even though people are very well aware about John K's abusive nature and his thing for minor girls, what this added is really the details, how deep the rabbit hole can go. And especially the fact that we got the perspective of two girls that really do have a major relationship, a personal relationship with John Kay, like with Robyn Byrd actually being an ex of John Kay when she was dating him when she was a teenager and he was like a 40-year-old man. And then you got Katie Price, who wanted to go in to the animation business, and John Kay was a major help to that. But one thing that really is sad about it is that you can tell how much of a predator that John Kay really is, because throughout the most part in the article, you can see how John Kay really does take advantage over these girls, how they are at a low point in their life, or how they are easily influential. Like, I think it was with Rice, where she was pretty much down on her luck. She was moving into a new place, and she didn't get accepted to a college or an art college and stuff like that. It's either Byrd or Robyn. And, you know, she didn't really have that much friends, but she trusted John Kay because he was her only friend, and he was the only person that she could trust. And the same thing can be said with Robyn, that honestly, throughout the whole thing, she was mostly so fixated on trying to be in the animation business that John Kay really was the key for her to actually get in and to have like an internship at Spumco and to actually work for him. And it really spiraled to the point where she really did play, like he really did play with her emotions. And she actually stated that John Kay as a boyfriend, sure, he'll like her personality and he'll like her body, but he doesn't give a crap about her emotions, which honestly, when you're in a relationship, that really is a major key, you know, to be in a good relationship. You have to care about the emotions of your partner. And that is something that John Kay just absolutely doesn't care about. You know, he likes that, he likes that she's a smart, intelligent girl with a hot body, even though that is a body that you should not touch yet. But whatever, how she feels and stuff like that, he doesn't care one bit. And honestly, like, just reading all this, yeah, it is absolutely disgusting. That really does show how John Kay really is a monster that does take advantage over minor girls, and we never truly know how deep this rabbit hole goes. Now, some of these, like, they're not truly confirmed as of yet. There are some things that the attorney has denied, including how John Kay has owned some actual child porn. But then again, if it actually is true, then at this point, nobody would really be that surprised about. And I know that for some people, it really is conflicting to hear about this news story, considering that, like I said before, John Kay is a major influence in the animation industry, and some people would look up to him as one of the most inspiring people in the industry. In fact, some people could even say that he was the closest thing to Tex Avery after Tex Avery passed away. And I mean, at this point, we really cannot deny the influence that he has done in animation, where we could see the elements that were based on stuff like Ren and Stimpy, onto whatever piece of animation that you could find nowadays, rather it be in animated features, in TV shows, or even in internet videos. That's probably one of the most influential places that you can actually go and find, where I remember Aaron Hansen, aka Egoraptor, mentioned that one of his biggest inspirations to be what was it? Yeah, like one of his inspirations to be an animator is actually the works of John Kay. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Aaron is a total John Kay fan. Like, he has expressed that he is not a fan whatsoever of how John Kay is as a person, being abusive to his employees and, being sexually attracted to minor girls. But it's an example to show how people are massively influenced with the works of John Kay. And it even did mention right over here regarding the importance of separating the art from the artist, and how people who have worked with John K., they would immediately say that, yes, of course, like, if they ever get an award, then one of the first people that they will thank is actually John K., because they, like, his works and working with him really did help them throughout their animation career. But him as a person is someone that you must avoid at all cost. So that really is the big thing. If you guys are major fans of Ren and Stimpy, or if John K. inspired you to get into animation, then that's perfectly okay. That shouldn't stop you from either enjoying Ren and Stimpy or from citing John K. as an inspiration, because really what you are in love with in that direction would be his works, his TV shows, his art style. And that is perfectly okay, because the influence that he has done there, it is legendary. But what he has done to people individually, that's when it's wrong. That is when it should be looked down upon. So again, like the case like with John Lasseter or Chris Savino, like if you are major fans of like Toy Story or The Loud House, that is perfectly okay. But it is highly important to separate the art from the artist, because at that point, like, I can understand that you would have some massive conflicts and people would not know what to do with themselves if either they should no longer watch Ren and Stimpy or stuff like that. And honestly, like, I do understand the pain and the confusion going on right over there, but yeah, that's basically my easy answer with this one is try to really learn to separate the art from the artist, that you can support the art style of John K., but not John K. himself. And yeah, honestly, this has been something that was a long time coming, and really, I just want to congratulate Robyn, Byrd, and Katie Price for being so brave to actually come out and actually describe their story. And I know this was something that really wasn't easy, because even in the article right over here, they would even mention how for a long time they have been scared to actually stand up and tell their story, considering that they're just afraid of the backlash from the fans of John K. They don't know how they would react. But considering that we are in the age of the hashtag #MeToo movement, it definitely was something that did inspire them and go speak out regarding their story, which honestly should have been brought out a long time ago. But the important thing is that I really am glad that Robyn, Byrd, and Katie Price did actually bring out their story to tell the truth regarding their relationship with John K. and how John K. truly is as a person. So what are going to be the consequences to John K. in that department? We'll just have to wait and see with what the future holds. But yeah, honestly, overall, this was something that was a long time coming. And that is pretty much all that I've got for this week. So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Animation Podcast. You can go ahead and find more of my work at film-book.com. Just search for Monsieur Brunet or the Animation Podcast. You can also go ahead and find me on Twitter at AniMat505. Now, if you have listened to this podcast on iTunes or any other podcast service, do us a favor right now and go rate and review this episode. You are going to be awesome for doing so. And if you have listened to this podcast on YouTube, hit that like button in our video and leave us a comment on your thoughts about the news this week. Tune in next week for the latest episode of the Animation Podcast and all things animation. Thank you guys so much for listening, and until next week, see you later, dudes.